Hello everybody. How you doing? I hope you're doing really well. I just had a momentary panic because I had a family member pop in and start talking to me about all sorts of stuff, and I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm meant to be starting streaming very shortly. We've got quarter now. That's okay. They'll be gone. I just need to make sure I've got my volume turned down on my phone and my headphones. Just a moment, because my headphones are also here and they were chatting to me last time and I didn't realize it. Sorry about that. Right, so there. And then they left, or they were about to leave, and then they were just sort of saying a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. And it was like 2 minutes to get up the stairs, catch my breath, sit down, get ready, make sure everything's in the right place, which I think it is. Check to see if there were any bots sitting in on my channel, which I don't want them doing, and then banning one, and all that sort of weird stuff that goes on right before you do something that you've done so many times before and you think would normally just go really well. Anyway, such is life. And I may have to also fiddle around over here with my charging setup, because I've got my iPad plugged in to this cute cord, but it's magnetic, and if it pokes down in the wrong place and gets in the way, and if the lights that are on it, because the cord has a light that goes through it, if the lights that are on it are distracting me too much, I might have to swap it back to its other normal cord. So if I disappear for a moment it will, and rattle around too much, it'll be probably because I'm doing that. Right, I'm here, you're here, great. Where did we get up to? Last time we had, the children were, they met Henry VIII and Anne Boleyn, and Elfrida really wanted to tell Anne to be very careful, otherwise she was going to lose her life because of being married to Henry VIII. And I don't think she helped the situation at all. But they managed to get away in time. So we don't know. We don't know what would have come of that. What else has happened? They did manage to meet up with cousin Richard, and he went back to his own time and they went back to their own time, but he didn't really seem particularly keen on helping them with something. Not quite sure why. Maybe he's on the same mission as they are, to find the family treasures, because we don't even know what time frame he's from. Maybe he's from their future. Ooh, have you thought of that? I hadn't really thought of that one before. I don't think I had anyway. Goodness me. It's just so many possibilities. So many possibilities. Right. I'm sure there was something else I was going to tell you about. Oh, yeah. I've got vertigo at the moment, which means that the balance canals in my ears are doing something weird, where if I lean the wrong way or get up the wrong way, my head spins. Most of the time it's not bad, but every now and then, like the other day, I was at the shop and I went and picked something up because I knocked it off the shelf. And of course I bent over to pick it up off the floor, and I suddenly my head started spinning, and I thought, oh my goodness, I'm going to fall over. So I grabbed hold of the shelf hand pole that was right next to me, and Joel, my son, who was with me, just put his hands on my shoulders to stop me from wobbling around too much. And the lady in the shop came over and said, are you all right? Can I help? So that was really nice that they were so helpful and paying attention, because sometimes you feel like in shops where they just let you do your own thing in the shop for a while instead of chasing you to sell you something, sometimes you feel like they're not paying much attention, but she was, so that was good. And no, I'm doing okay. It's just that I've got this vertigo going on, and I think it's because I'm just about to get a cold. I've had it once or twice before, and every time it's been something like that, where I've got a gluggy cold that's affected my thinking, my clarity, my ability to do very much. Instead of being chesty and lots of coughs and all that sort of stuff, it's actually been more sort of just affecting my head. Is that what they call a head cold? I don't know. Maybe it is. Anyway, so that's what's going on with me. If I come across as a little bit today, that's probably what it is. I'll try not to fall off my chair so that you have to send for help. And if anyone does need to send for help, then go on to Twitter and find Son of Jev, spelt with the jevvv, the way mine is, Son of Jev, no spaces, and message him if you get really stuck and worried. Um, that's probably the easiest way to find him. So I don't think there's anything else going on. No, got the stuff sorted out with the rallies. I've had some breakfast and lunch, well, combined. I tend to have my breakfast at lunchtime. I've had something to eat. I've had a bit of a laugh at some funnies with Joel earlier on today, so that was good. It's good for the mental health to have something that you find humorous that you can concentrate on and enjoy. I'm just having a wee sip of my coffee. Good to have you all here. I hope Q is starting to feel a bit better. What else is going on? I've got a jigsaw puzzle ready. If anyone would like the jigsaw puzzle, let me know and I'll make it active on the overlay for you. Just giving you the link will mean that you can do it, but nobody can see what's going on or know that there's actually a puzzle going on. So if you let me know first, I'll put the puzzle so it's visible, and then you can use the normal jigsaw link or puzzle link command, the exclamation puzzle or exclamation jigsaw. Anyway, I should introduce myself to everybody who's new here. Hi, I'm Jev. I read old children's books. Yes, old children's books. Older than me. This one is 125 years old. Last month it was it was given to my great uncle, my great uncle, my grandmother's brother in 1897. So it was printed in 1897 or even earlier. So, sorry, I'm just trying to put it back in the same place because otherwise I'll lose it and I won't be able to find it next time, because my office is also the storage space for the house. And I have a lot of stuff, as well as the house having a lot of stuff, because our house doesn't have proper cupboards yet. It will get them one day. We've only been in here for like 15 years. One day we'll get proper cupboards, but that's okay. No rush. Anyway, so I grew up reading old children's books because they were there. They were the books that were available, readily available, because they were the books that my parents and my grandparents had read. And so they gave them to me as books to read, because books that you already have are cheaper than going and buying books, aren't they? And we didn't have an easy access, apart from at school, to a public library at that stage, because where I live used to be out in the country. It was farming area. It still has a lot of farming, but it has a lot more people now, so we have a decent public library system. In fact, I remember when they got it started, it had a little card in the back of each book, and they would pull the card out, which had the name of the book on it and the author on it, and then they would write your name on the card and then put a date stamp on the card as to when the book was due back again, and then they'd take the stamp, put it on the ink pad again, and then stamp it on the due date slip that was glued into the back of the book. They'd stamp it on there, so you'd take the book, which had this piece of paper in it that would show you when you had to return the book by, otherwise you'd pay an overdue fee, and you'd take the book away and you'd read it and bring it back and go and find another one. Anyway, that was the sort of library we had at school, but also the sort of library that did eventually come to our local area, because a bunch of volunteers decided that, yes, it would be really good to have access to a library for everybody, not just for the children at school. So they set that up, and then eventually that was included with the council library for the nearby town, which was good. We actually got a little bit more of a service then. And then they computerised it. And then where we live, the council region that we are in merged with the bigger council regions nearby, and we became part of a large city region. Technically, I live in a city, even though if I look out my windows on one side, I see the sea, and if I look out my windows on another side, I see a park, and if I look out my windows on another side, I see paddocks with animals in them that are being farmed, and hills in the distance, and if I look out on the other side of the house, I see houses. So where I live is semi-rural. We have paddocks around us with animals, and I hear the cows or the sheep every now and then. Um, it's mainly sheep, not a lot of cows, really, unless they're non-milking cattle, because there's a lot of hard work if you're doing dairy farming. Um, so old-fashioned. We're a bit slow on the uptake with some of our systems that we have in the part of the country that I live in. We finally got fibre internet, high-speed internet, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, right at the beginning of the first COVID lockdown in New Zealand. The afternoon before the first lockdown started, it was starting at midnight that night, and the technicians from the telco that was doing all the cabling for it completed the installation at our house and made sure it was working. They were very, very busy that afternoon because they'd already started ours the day before, and then it was taking a bit longer because we've got a big concrete house and they had to drill through the concrete in a couple of places and things like that. But they got it working for us, which was just as well, because there were 9 of us living in the house during our first lockdown. 9 adults. That's a lot of people in one house. Not apartments, 9 adults in one house. And we were all using the internet because everyone was stuck at home instead of being at work, weren't they? Because they were people who were working in the hospitality industry. They couldn't work from home. And so everyone was using the internet. So it was just as well we got fibre the day before the lockdown started. But also, that was when I started doing my reading. I started reading within the first couple of days of lockdown. I just used my phone. I put it on a little wee mini phone tripod. This is the tripod part of it. The actual clip for it's downstairs because I use it for taking photographs of things for my work now. And I would just find a reasonably quiet place in the house somewhere, pull out the book that I was reading the stories from, and read the next story at about this time of day, every day, 7 days a week, until I had finished the book. And then I managed to get hold of other books in the series and borrowed them from the library and read those on the on my phone via Twitch to create. This was the first videos that went up on my channel. So I carried on doing that until I had read all the books that I could in that particular book series. There were a few stories missing because the first book that I was reading from was actually a compilation book. So it had been like it was, you know how you get with music, you get an artist will release a best of album, and it will have songs from different albums that they had done previously. Well, the book was a little bit like that. Not a best of, but a collection of stories from the various books that the author had published. And so you had several stories from this book, and then several from that, and several from another. And the books I was able to access through our library system as digital copies were not all of the books. There were only some of the books I could access, and so there were gaps in the story. Well, it wasn't a really continuous story, but there were gaps. There were little stories that were missing because the books are made up of lots of little stories about this one main character and her friends. Sorry, I need to take my slippers off because it's getting warm. Anyway, so I did eventually stop reading for a while, 6 months I think it was, because I'd run out of books for the story. I didn't know how to get hold of the rest of the ones. I finally managed to, and so I completed the set. I read all of the stories, and then I thought, well, I know I can't find another book that's just like that because nobody else has written one that has quite that feel to it. But I wanted to carry on with reading because I thought it was a really fun thing to do, to be able to share books from my memories, ones that I had grown up with people who maybe hadn't heard any of those stories before. People I mentioned it to were saying, oh, I remember that book when I was growing up. But my kids never ever got to read any of those stories because we couldn't find them when I had children, sort of thing. And so I thought, well, there's a whole bunch of books that I can still come across and find and borrow from the library and see if I can find them online that I can read. hence the public domain books. And why not carry on doing it? So instead of trying to find something that was exactly the same style, which there wasn't, I decided, well, let's broaden it a bit. Let's just do public domain children's books. So that's what I read. I read books that have been, they're often still being published, but the actual original copyright has expired for them. So the Alice in Wonderland and Alice's Adventures Through the Looking Glass by Lewis Carroll, those are public domain books. You do not have to pay the author or the publisher for the use of those books, because the person who wrote them has been dead for so long that they are now actually freely available for people to read. And the best place I've found for actually finding public domain books is actually Project Gutenberg, which is, I shall give you the link for it. There you go, that's in the chat. Oh, whoop, no, the chat over that side if you are watching this on Twitch. Now, if you're watching this on YouTube as a recording, look for a website called Project Gutenberg. And it's not spelt the way I used to always try and spell it and never find it. It's got two E's instead of an E and an I or an E and an A. So it's Gutenberg. I used to think it was Burg. Berg.org. And if you go there, you will actually find a whole lot of books that are digital editions of books that are all available as public domain books. You don't have to pay for them. They are not library books. You don't have to return them. They're not even digital library books. So you can download them to your device of choice, whether it's a computer. You can even read them online. They have HTML-based versions of them. If they are children's books that have illustrations, often those illustrations are included. Sometimes there will be a couple of versions of a book. So there'll be in the listings, there'll be a book with illustrations by one illustrator, and then there'll be another version of it which has illustrations by a different illustrator. And usually that's because there were different editions of the book that were published. Sometimes one was published in America, sometimes one in England. Or the release has been quite a number of years between the two, and so that the original publishers have decided, let's refresh this and put in a new set of pictures and see if the book does any better back in the day. It's wonderful, because then you actually get to see the book through other people's imaginations, what they've actually decided might be an interesting way to depict it. So speaking of illustrations, the current book that we're reading, today is the last reading from it. The illustrations are by a chap, I think it's H.R. Miller. I can't remember what the initials stand for, and he actually did a lot of illustrations for most of, if not all of, this particular author, Edith Nesbit, all of her children's books. Most of her children's books I know. I don't know if he did all of her children's books, but I love his illustrations. They just sort of seem to catch hold really well of what she's writing, and it resonates well with what's in my own imagination. And for me, that's something that works, that is important when you're actually getting a book that has illustrations in it, that the illustrations don't clash badly with the pictures that are being drawn inside your own head. So back to my background, my reading, what I'm doing. As you can see, I'm an older woman. I've got children of my own. They are now adults. No, they do not have children of their own at this stage. We do have a cat, which belongs to one of my children, and the cat lives with us. So if you follow me on Instagram, you will get notifications when I go live. Most days that I go live, I will post an Instagram post saying that I'm going live with a picture that either is inspiring or is amusing or just connects somehow, or it's the cat. And he has his own Instagram account, but he doesn't post very often. But he's delightful. He's big and he's fluffy and he is all attitude. Great to have you here, Jonathan. Good to see. Yep, Tiggs. Yep, very good. So the cat's name is Theodore. And so you will often get to see Theodore when I do an Instagram post to say that I'm going to be going live in half an hour's time or whatever. I try to post it half an hour, 3/4 of an hour before I go live, just so that the different computer systems have enough time to trickle through the information to other channels such as Twitter. I always get those two. I know exactly which one is which, but Twitter is the one that sometimes gets through rather late, just because it goes through yet another handling system before it gets there. Yeah, he's a great cat. And like I say, he's all attitude. And when people meet him in real life, they see this. Sometimes they don't know we've got a cat. They'll walk into the house and he'll just be lounging around the way cats do. And sometimes, especially this time of year, because it's winter, he'll be on the carpet at the top of the stairs when they come up the stairs from the front entrance into the living room. And they'll see this cat there and their eyes will just get bigger and bigger and bigger. And they'll go, man, that's a huge cat. And then they'll go, is he Maine Coon? Because Maine Coon cats are often very large. And I have to say, we don't know. We think he is, because he's from the SPCA. He was a rescue kitten, part of a litter of kittens that all had a very similar look. And they've all turned out very fluffy and quite large. And he has a lot of the characteristics of a Maine Coon. But he doesn't have a pedigree because he was a rescue cat off the streets. But yeah, all attitude, all attitude. So very, very, very occasionally he will make an appearance here on Twitch. Not very often because he's a bit antisocial. That's about the best way to explain it. He's quite happy to sit in the background on the sofa that's behind my green screen at the other end of the mezzanine floor. But usually he doesn't bother. Usually he sits on the coffee table downstairs or hides under the bed or something like that. Just stays out of the way. And then he'll come up and rub up against you after you've finished reading and say, hi, I'm here, and purr very, very loudly. Anyway, so that was totally irrelevant, but that's part of the household here is this cat. So if you like cats, great. And if you don't like cats, then I'll try to keep them off stream, I suppose. Just put your hand up and let me know if you want me to start the jigsaw puzzle thing for you so that you can actually do that. If you click the link for it, the command link for it, it won't come up until I've actually put it on. Well, it'll show in the chat, but it won't actually show on the screen for everyone to see. But let me know if you do want to do the jigsaw puzzle. So my background with reading. Yeah, so I grew up reading old books and appreciated the fact that I understood that the world was much bigger than just where I lived, and that the world had a much broader range of experiences, and history was real and people did live in it and were connected to us. Or if you were reading a story, it was set in these different times. And it might be imaginative, but it was still imaginary, but it was still actually sometimes based in a real time that is not where we live now. And it might be written as if it was now by the person who is writing it, but in actual fact, when you're reading it, you're thinking, this isn't now, this is a long time ago. Oh, that person wrote it when it was now for them. And just things like this. And it's all part of the stuff that just sort of stretches your brain. It's like, if you do lots of bicep curls, they're a particular type of exercise that you do when you're holding on to a big weight. I'll just move over here so I can find a way to demonstrate it for you. Find something that's useful. Okay. Pretending my drink bottle is a dumbbell. So handle, weight at each end. Right, a bicep curl is where you hold it and then you raise and lower your... You have your arm out like this, and then you raise your arm like this, and then you take it back out again, except that your arm is pointing down further, and you're doing this with it, and you're working on building this muscle here. And so the more you do that, slowly, not too fast, but with enough weight that you're holding on to, that you're making the muscles that you already have work hard. Do it slowly and keep doing this, and then don't just do it one day, do it another day, and then you do it another day, and then you do it another day, and you do it another day, and you keep doing this. What you end up with is these muscles here become bigger. Your body says, we're doing lots of work. I need to make this bigger so it copes better. Okay, so that's how muscles build. You have to provide the material for it. You have to provide the fuel, the protein, and the various other nutrients in your meals to provide the fuel for your body to rebuild those, to build those muscles bigger. That, not physically, but mentally, that happens in your brain. The more you use your brain and provide fuel for it and opportunity, the more it increases its capacity to cope with the information you're giving it, especially if you're doing it in a particular area. And so when often people, when they're learning something very new that they've never ever had any exposure to before, may not be new to everybody else, but this is a new thing for them. When they first start doing it, for the first week that they are starting to learn this new thing, they will often say, oh, I'm so tired, my brain is so tired, or I feel like my brain is being stretched. And it's not that it's physically being stretched or the muscles growing bigger, it's that mentally, though, the connections that are in your mind, in your brain, that relate information between the different parts of your memory and your processing and stuff like that, are actually building stronger and stronger connections. And the ability to process things at better and better speeds. And so it is, in some ways, metaphorically, it's building muscles, but it's building muscles inside your head. So reading books that don't come from our time period, that are about people that are different to us, that are about places that are different to the places that we live, actually also builds those muscles in our brains. And it has been known for quite a long time now that people who read fiction, that means made up stories that are well written preferably, but ones that they feel a sense of connection to because they're reading them, they feel sympathy for the people in the stories, they understand the plight that they're going through, even if it is not the reader's own personal experience, those people actually become more and more understanding of other people in real life, of the fact that people who live in different situations to them actually go through difficulties and can be concerned and considerate of them instead of putting them down, instead of seeing them as opponents and all that sort of stuff. So it grows your ability to sympathize and empathize with other people if you actually engage with reading fiction. So that's as good a reason as any, I think, to read fiction. And I love reading children's books because usually it's going to have a good ending. And I like that. And they're not quite as complicated as some of the adult books are. And it's not as heady. It's more like, let's get in and have an adventure. And there's usually a bit of humour involved too. So that's all the background. There's enough of that. I was going to do it really short today and we're nearly at 1:30 already. So I do have my 3 tips. Jonathan hasn't missed out on the 3 tips. 3 tips: drinks, snacks, and comfortable place. So drinks, make sure you got your water. Make sure you got your water. Something that'll help keep your brain functioning and your body. You'll see me sipping on this from time to time. I haven't yet worked out how to do a points redeem for hydrate or anything like that. Somebody can put me onto a link for that one day if they want to, for how to do that with channel points on Twitch, because I haven't figured that out yet. I will get there, but I haven't done it today. Anyway, so this is what you'll actually see me drinking on, and speaking of which, I need to. It's a really good idea if you're watching someone on Twitch and they are staying hydrated to actually make sure that you drink as often as they do, because often when we're watching something, when we're enjoying it, when we're involved, we forget. And then we get dehydration headaches the next day. It's terrible. Don't do that. Drinks. I always have water handy, but I often also have coffee because that's my favorite drink, my drink of choice. And I'm going to have some more. Snacks. Point number 2, tip number 2, snacks. What have we got in the treat jar? Here you go. Here's the treat jar with the... One day somebody's going to use it and I'm going to be like gobsmacked that they did. So This is my treat jar. It's actually a pet food treat jar, and it's got a QR code on it that you can scan if you pick up your phone and hold it up to it and scan it. Probably not clear enough on this camera. Um, but that's just a reminder for me that I should actually mention it. In here, I have one sad little half packet of crackers. That is not what my treats are today, because I didn't bring the cheese upstairs to have with those crackers. What I have instead is New Zealand ginger nuts. Yes, a little bit like ginger crisps or ginger thins that you have elsewhere, but usually a lot harder and really good if you're not used to hard ones, if you dunk them in hot tea or hot coffee. Don't leave them too long because the dunked part will fall off and then you'll get ginger nut sludge in the bottom of your cup. You can also dunk them in cold milk if you're a milk drinker. Very yummy. And some of us just eat them straight. We don't even dunk them. But it's nice to have biscuits that you can have either way. And biscuits is the right word in New Zealand. If you're in North America, if you're a cookies person, then accept biscuit as meaning that sort of thing. What North America, well, USA Americans call biscuits, we call scones. They are not biscuits. They are scones. Biscuits are thinner and harder. Anyway, drinks, snacks, comfort. Comfort being somewhere comfortable to sit or lie down. Here's my cushion that I always wave at you guys. If you are working, that's okay. I'm not going to be giving you a test on this, probably. So I'm happy for you to be watching or listening, but also to be doing something else at the same time. In fact, I really expect you to be doing something like that, just because if you've got stuff that you need to do, just go ahead and do it. I'm just going to sort this out for you. 104 pieces. Let's make it 135. That's a bit better. And give you a bit of contrast, a bit of blending in with the background. Yes, I have been distracted. And I'll give you a new link for this and get that out of the way. I feel like I'm kind of getting a little bit more onto it with some of these things, able to do it a bit quicker than I used to. Yes, I am looking at my other monitor. And no, I don't do it all through keyboard shortcuts, which some people do. Right, those of you who want to do, oh wonderful, counting courier bags. There you go. Those of you who want to do the puzzle, the link is now available using the jigsaw or the puzzle command in the chat, and I'll leave you guys to call that up as you want it. So the other comfort thing that I suggest is if you are just wanting to chill and things have been a bit stressful, you're crook, sick, ill, all of those words, they come from different places, then sometimes having a stream buddy is handy. So this is Quest Sprout. Quest Sprout was designed by Matthew of Swords Comic, and you can look him up sometime. And actually he does stream sometimes too, so I might just see if I can remember what. No, I can't remember. I'm not even going to try. Sorry about that. Right, how about we get on with reading? I've covered the 3 tips. I do have a bonus tip for you. This is the bonus tip. Pencil and paper or pen and paper. We often come across words that are unfamiliar to us when we're reading. We being all of us, not just me. I'm not using the royal we here. Unlocking my book. So if I give you the name of something, a word for something, great that you feel happy to lurk. Q. Thank you. Sorry, my brain is just going 2 places at once. Happy lurking. There you go. Yeah, often I will read words in a book that I do explain, just because I'm aware that my experience with words is probably a lot more extensive than a lot of people who are younger than me. and haven't necessarily read as much as me, especially old books. And also living next door to two different sets of grandparents and all sorts of things like that means that I've had a lot more experience with old words and old ways of doing things. I will often share those things in the story. I will often interrupt the line of a story, the flow of a story, to explain either something that we've just read in the way of words. This is a strange word. By the way, have you looked up mangelwurzel yet? I still haven't seen anyone mention that over in our Discord server. But I will not just explain words, I'll often explain places or ways of doing things because either I've had personal experience with it or it's something that I've known a lot about for some reason or other. Yeah. So there's all that sort of stuff goes on. But if I read out a word and you're not sure what it is, either ask what it is in case anybody else in chat knows or I know, or write the word down and look it up. Or if I'm reading and I say I'm not sure what that means, you can look it up and write the explanation in the chat and I will read that explanation out to you. Yes, it is a plant. Do you know what sort of plant it is? Mangel, M-A-N-G-E-L, wurzel, W-U-R-Z-E-L. And I wonder where the word comes from. Anyway, there you go. That's your little challenge. I don't usually give people homework, but that's about it. Mangelwurzel, I think, has been the only homework I've given in the whole time we've done it, officially. If you do want to join us over on our Discord server, there's the link. So there. The Discord server is very quiet, as most of you who are already part of it know. So it's not going to be really taxing. It's not going to take all of your attention or anything like that. But it is a place where sometimes Jonathan will ask about a word that he's not sure about, or he thinks he knows what it is, but what are other people's impressions of it? Have they come across it before? Or got suggestions of how to find out, which is a great way to do it. Yes, it's a cultivated root vegetable. Very good. We're getting there. Well done, Q. You're doing very well. Sorry to pull you out of lurk, by the way. But also it's a place for suggesting books that we haven't read yet that you might know of, that I might not know of. You can't assume that I know of all the old books. You might know of old books that I don't know of. And so you can make suggestions there, or even just discuss books that you've really enjoyed that aren't ones that we're going to be reading because they're not yet public domain. I'm fine for that too. I do put up sometimes the illustrations from the books we've been reading. I do want to get into doing more of that because they are also available as public domain so that people can actually open them from the links that I put up there. When you see in my channels for the different books where the illustrations are, if you click on an illustration, it will open it up bigger on the page. Underneath the actual pop-up picture, it will have a bit that says open original or something like that. If you click on that, it will open in another tab on your browser a full-size version of how it was when it was put online. And that was often a lot bigger, and you will see some of these illustrations, especially by this particular author. I remember that very specifically when we were reading the Story of the Amulet book, that some of those pictures there, they looked interesting, the pictures did, but when you actually looked at them much bigger, probably at about the size that he was drawing them at for the thickness of what the lines were, there was so much information in them, so much detail. He'd obviously done a bit of historic research to actually be able to put this sort of visual detail into the pictures and that sort of stuff, all that sort of stuff. So yeah, there's pictures there, you can get into conversations, all sorts of things. But like I say, it's a fairly quiet channel. So I think that's everything. Have I forgotten anything apart from reading? I can't think of anything else at the moment. Right. So yes, it's a cultivated root vegetable. Do you need me to give you any clues? Anybody else? Any other takers? Jonathan, do you know what a mangelwurzel is? Having done the whole plant thing? It's not an ornamental. I know that much. I can tell you that much. Anyway, and I've got another question related to Mangel Wurzel, if you guys get a little bit more detail on it, just as an aside from the story that we're reading. So, we are reading. I've heard it before, but I don't recall. Yeah, okay, yep. What it is something that has two different names. Aside from Mangel Wurzel, it has two different names depending on which part of the world you come from. And I'm talking English language names. Right, so we are reading The House of Arden by Edith Nesbit. This is chapter 14. It's the last chapter of the book, and it's called The Finding of the Treasure. These children have been trying to find the lost treasure of the House of Arden, which will help them to restore the house, the castle, maybe even get the lands back that used to belong to the castle, and also maintain and upgrade the cottages that are part of the estate, so that the people who are living there aren't living with leaks in the roof, so that the thatch is renewed. A thatch roof is brilliant when it's from new through to a certain age, and it can last quite a long time. But the longer it's on there and the straw is getting old and decaying, the more it leaks, the more birds and insects and rats and mice live up in the thatch, that sort of thing. But when it's in a good state, it's actually a very, very good roof. If you're living in a cold climate, a thatch roof can make your house much, much warmer. But you can't catch the rain off the roof to be able to use it for drinking. Swings and roundabouts, that sort of stuff. Anyway, I'll get on with the story. They're trying to find this treasure. That's what the book has been about. So far, they haven't had any luck. Chapter 14, The Finding of the Treasure. The last chapter of the book. Will the treasure be what they think it is? Will they actually find it? To Richard Arden, shouted the Mouldiwarp of Arden as it leapt onto the hour hand of the pearl and ivory clock. That's odd, because they were on the white clock. The clock hands were moving around faster and faster. This is down in the smuggler's cave. It was a clock that was made on the sand inside the limestone smuggler's cave. It's an outline of a clock. And the detailing on the clock is made with pieces of pearl and ivory, and yet it's magical because the Mouldiwarp does magic with white things. So pearl and ivory are both white, and this is a way of moving through time using the clocks that he controls. And so I'll read the last little bit of the previous chapter. And the minute hand of pearl and ivory began to move faster and faster and faster, till if there had been anyone to look at it, it would have been invisible. It was moving so fast. But there wasn't anyone to look at it, for the Mouldiwarp had leapt onto the hour hand at the last moment and was hanging on there by all its claws, because just prior to that, Richard had jumped off somewhere. Elfrida had asked to go where Daddy is. No, Edred had asked to go where Daddy is, because he had learned from Richard that white clocks can be told what to do. And now the Mouldiwarp has jumped onto the clock with them and hanging on with all its claws, because the hands are spinning around. To Richard Arden, shouted the Mouldiwarp of Arden as it leapt onto the hour hand of the pearl and ivory clock, and then the hands went round far too fast for speech to be possible. When the clock stopped, which it did quite suddenly, Edred caught his breath and shouted, "To my daddy," at the top of his voice, and the hands began to move again so quickly that neither of the children had time to see where they had stopped. They just saw that they were in a room, and that the Mouldiwarp, who seemed suddenly to have grown to the size of an enormous polar bear, leaned over the edge of the clock and caught at something with a paw a foot long. So the Mouldiwarp was still on the clock with them, but he had reached down and got something from in this room, and then someone called out something that they couldn't hear, and almost at once the clock stopped. And they saw something climb off the clock, and the clock was in the cave again. and there was Cousin Richard in quite different clothes from those he had worn at King Henry VIII's Maying. They were the kind of clothes Edred had worn in Boney's time, and the cave was just as it had been then, with kegs and bales and the stream running through it. Interesting. You must come with us, said the Mouldiwarp, slowly resuming its ordinary size. Don't you see? If these children let their father see them, they'll have to explain the whole magic, and when once magic's explained, all the magic's gone. Like the scent out of scent when you leave the cork off the bottle, but you can see him and help, if he wants to help, without having to explain anything. Intriguing. Ooh, wonder how this is going to work out. It's getting rather complicated. All right, said Richard, and he muttered something about being the head of the house. So he's not really impressed with having to be part of what they want to do. Only, he added, I dropped my magic here. He stooped to the sand and picked up a little stick with silver bells hung round it, like the one that Folly carries at a carnival. It's got the Arden arms and crest on it, he said, pointing, and by the light of the pearl and ivory clock the children could see the shield and the checkers and the Mouldiwarp above. So there's a picture on the crest of their family, which is like a shield with decorations and bits around it. There's an image of a Mouldiwarp at the top, which is a little mole at the top. Mouldiwarp is another name, regional name for a mole in that part of England. Now I'm ready. Cousins, I take back everything I said. You see, my father's dead, and if I'd only had half your chance, that was what I thought. See? So give us your hand. The hands were given. But oh, said Elfrida, this is different from all the rest. That was a game, and this is real, my sock lamb, said the Mouldiwarp with unusual kindness. Now your cousin Richard will help you, and when you get your father back, as I make no doubts but what you will, then your cousin Dick, he'll go back to his own time and generation and be seen no more, and your father won't never guess that you was there so close to him as you will be. And yes, his accent did change. And yes, that was me. But in the story, they have already told us that his accent did change depending on where they were and when, because he had lived in so many different times. I don't believe we shall, said Elfrida, nodding stubbornly, and for the first time in this story she did not believe. Oh dear. Oh well, said the Mouldiwarp bitterly. Of course, if you don't believe you'll find him, you'll not find him. That's plain as a currant loaf. But I believe we shall find him, said Edred, and Elfrida's only a girl. It might be only a dream, of course, he added thoughtfully. Don't you think I don't know that? But if it's a dream, I'm going to stay in it. I'm not going back to Arden without my father. Do you understand, said the Mouldiwarp, that if I take you to any other time or place in your own century, it's the full stop. There isn't any more. It means there's no chance of our getting into the past again to look for treasure or anything. Oh, chance, said the Mouldiwarp. I mean no magic clock'll not ever be made for you no more, that's what I mean. And if you find your father, you'll not be Lord Arden any more either. I hope it will not shock you very much when I tell you that at that thought a distinct pang shot through Edred's breast. He really felt it in his flesh and blood breast, like a sharp knife. It was dreadful of him to think of such a thing, when there was a chance of his getting his daddy in exchange for just a title. It was dreadful, but I am a truthful writer, and I must own the truth. In one moment he felt the most dreadful things, that it was all nonsense, and perhaps daddy wasn't there, and it was no good looking for him anyway, and he wanted to go on being Lord Arden, and hadn't they better get home? The thoughts came quite without his meaning them to, and Edred pushed them from him with both hands, so to speak. Hating himself because they had come to him, and he will hate himself for those thoughts, though he did not mean or wish to have them, as long as he lives. Every time he remembers them, that is the worst of thoughts. They live forever. Oh, hang on, I'm just writing something in here. I'm just going to give you a word to help you if you need to look it up. Oh, the clues I give you. We did actually come across this word earlier in the story. Carrying on. So he was having these terrible thoughts and he was pushing the thoughts away, but the thoughts would still come to his mind later on in his life. I don't want to be Lord Arden, was what he instantly said. I want my father. And what he said was true in spite of those thoughts that he didn't mean to have and can never forget. Shall I come along of you? Said the Mouldiwarp, and everyone said yes, very earnestly. A friendly Mouldiwarp is a very useful thing to have at hand when you are going you don't know where. Now you won't make any mistake, the mole went on. This is the wind up and the end all. So it is. No more chestses and attics, no more fine clothes out of him neither, and no more white clocks. All right, said Edred impatiently. We understand. Now let's go. You wait a bit, said the Mouldiwarp aggravatingly. You've got to settle what you'll be and what way your father had better come out. I think through the chink of the chalk. Any way you like, said Elfrida, and Mouldiwarp dear, shan't we ever see you again? Oh, I don't say that, he said. You'll see me at dinner every day. At dinner? I'm on all the spoons and forks anyhow, it said, and sniggered more aggravatingly than ever. Mouldy, cried Edred earnestly, I've got it. You disguise us so that father won't know us, and then we shan't be out of it all, whatever it is. I think that's a first-rate idea, said Richard, and me too. Not you, said Mouldiwarp, but it waved a white paw at Edred and Elfrida, and at once they found themselves dressed in tight-fitting white fur dresses. Their hands even wore fat white fur gloves with tiger claws at the ends of the fingers. At the same moment, the Mouldiwarp grew big again to the size of a very small polar bear, while Cousin Richard suddenly assumed the proportions of a giant. I'm thinking that they've just become polar bear cubs. Now, said the Mouldiwarp, and they all leapt on the white clock, which started at once. When it stopped, and they stepped off it, it was onto a carpet of thick moss. Overhead, through the branches of enormous trees, there shone stars of a wonderful golden brightness. The air was warm-scented as if with flowers and warm to breathe, yet they did not feel that their fur coats were a bit too warm for the weather. The moss was so soft to their feet that Edred and Elfrida wanted to feel it with their hands as well, so down they went on all fours. Then they longed to lie down and roll on it. They longed so much that they had to do it. It was a delicious sensation rolling in the soft moss. Cousin Richard, still very much too big, stood looking down on them and laughing. They were too busy rolling to look at each other. This, he said, is a first-class lark. Now for the cleft in the chalk. Shall I carry you? He added politely, addressing the Mouldiwarp, who rather surprisingly consented. Come on, he said to the children as he went. They followed him. There was something about the moss or about the fur coats or the fur gloves that somehow made it seem easier and more natural to follow on all fours, and really their hands were quite as useful to walk on as their feet. Never had they felt so light, so gay, never had walking been such easy work. They followed Richard through the forest till quite abruptly, like the wall at the end of a shrubbery, a great cliff rose in front of them, ending the forest. There was a cleft in it. they saw the darkness of it rising above them as the moon came out from a cloud and shone full on the cliff's white face, and the face of the cliff and the shape of the cleft were very like that little cleft in the chalk that the Mouldiwarp had made when he had pulled up turf on the Sussex Downs at home. And all this time Edred and Elfrida had never looked at each other. There had been so many other things to look at. "That's the way," said Cousin Richard, pointing up at the dark cleft. Though it was so dark, Edred and Elfrida could see quite plainly that there were no steps, only ledges that were a very polite goat might have said were a foothold. "You couldn't climb up there," Edred said to the great Richard, yet somehow he never doubted that he and Elfrida could. "No," said the Mouldiwarp, leaping from Richard's arms to the ground. "I must carry him." And it grew to polar bear size quite calmly before their very eyes. "They don't see it, even yet," said Richard to the mole. "See what?" Elfrida asked. "Why, what your disguise is. You're cats, my dear cousins, white cats." Then Edred and Elfrida did look at each other, and it was quite true. They were. "I'll tell you what my plan is," Richard went on. "The people of this country have never seen tame cats. They think a person who can tame animals is a magician. I found that out when I was here before, so now I've got 3 tame animals, all white too. That is, if you'll play," he added to the Mouldiwarp. "You will play, won't you?" "Oh yes, I'll play," it said, snarling a little. "And you cats must only mew and purr and do whatever I tell you. You'll see how I work it. Don't do anything for anyone but me and your father." "Is father really here?" asked Elfrida, trembling a little. "He's on the other side of the great cliff," said Richard. "The cliff no man can climb, but you can come." He got onto the Mouldiwarp's back and put his arms round its polar bear-like neck, and it began to climb. That was a climb. Even the cats, which Edred and Elfrida now could not help seeing that they were, found it as much as they could do to keep their footing on those little smooth shelving ledges. If it had not been that they had cat's eyes and so could see in the dark, they never could have done it. And it was such a long, long climb too. It seemed as though it would last forever. "I've heard of foreign climbs," said Elfrida, "but I never thought they would be like this. I suppose it is foreign." Foreign climbs. She has said it, CLIMBS, because they are climbing. Foreign climbs is CLIMES, as in foreign places, climes, climates, that type of thing. The way children misunderstand words that they hear. "Right, I suppose it is foreign," said Elfrida. "South American," said Richard. "You can look for it on the map when you get home, but you won't find it. Come on." And then when they had climbed to the top of the cliff, they had to go down on the other side, for the cliff rose like a wall between the forest and a wide plain. And by the time they reached that plain, the sun was looking down at them over the cliff. The plain was very large and very wonderful, and a towering wall of cliff ran all around it. The plain was all laid out in roads and avenues and fields and parks. Towns and palaces were dotted about it. A tall aqueduct on hundreds of pillars brought water from an arch in the face of the cliff to the middle of the plain. And from these canals ran out to the cliff wall that bounded the plain all round, even and straight, like the spokes of a wheel, and disappeared under low arches of stone back under the cliff. There were lakes, there were gardens, there were great stone buildings whose roofs shone like gold where the rising sun struck them. In the fields were long-horned cattle and strange, high-shouldered sheep, which Richard said were llamas. "I know," he explained, "from seeing them on the postage stamps." They advanced into the plain and sat down under a spreading tree. "We must wait till we're found," said Richard. He had assumed entire command of the expedition, and Edred and Elfrida, being cats, had to submit. But they did not like it. Presently, shepherds coming early to attend to their flocks found a boy in strange clothes, attended by a great white bear and two white cats sitting under a tree. The shepherds did not seem afraid of the bear, only curious and interested. But when the Mouldiwarp had stood up on its hind legs and bowed gravely, and the cats had stood up and lain down and shaken paws and turned somersaults at the word of command, one of the shepherds wrapped his red woolen cloak round him with an air of determination, and making signs that Richard was to follow, set off with all his might for the nearest town. Quite soon they found themselves in the central square of one of the most beautiful towns in the world. I wish I had time to tell you exactly what it was like, but I have not. Sorry, I'm just going to check to see when I'm meant to give you this next picture. Okay, not yet. Right. I wish I had time to tell you exactly what it was like, but I have not. I can only say that it was at once clean and grand, splendid and comfortable. There was not a dirty corner, nor a sad face from one end of the town to the other. The houses were made of great blocks of stone inlaid wonderfully with gold and silver. Clear streams or baby canals ran by the side of every street, and each street had a double row of trees running all along its wide length. There were open grassy spaces and flower beds set with flowers. Sorry, I'm just checking something. That's right. Cool. Carrying on. Making sure there's not something I've forgotten to do. Because that's happened before, hasn't it? Right. The clear streams or baby canals ran by the side of every street, and each street had a double row of trees running all along its wide length. There were open grassy spaces and flower beds set with flowers, some glowing with their natural and lovely colours, and some cunningly fashioned of gold and silver and jewels. There were fountains and miniature waterfalls. The faces of the people were dark but kind and unwrinkled. No worries. There was a market with stalls of pleasant fruits and cakes and bright-coloured soft clothes. There was a great hall in the middle of the town with a garden on its flat roof, and to this hall the shepherd led the party. The big doors of inlaid wood were set wide, and a crowd all dressed in soft stuffs of beautiful colours filled the long room inside. The room was open to the sky. A wrinkled awning drawn close at one side showed that the people could have a roof when it suited them. There was a raised stone platform at one end, and on this 3 chairs. The crowd made way for the shepherd and his following, and as they drew near to the raised platform, the 2 white cats, who were Edred and Elfrida, looked up and saw them in the middle and biggest chair, a splendid, dark-faced man in a kind of fringed turban with 2 long feathers in it, and in the 2 chairs to right and left of him, clothed in beautiful embroidered stuffs, with shining collars of jewels about their necks, Father and Uncle Jim. Just a moment. There is something I need to check. Sorry, there is a picture, and I just want to know when I'm meant to be showing it to you. That one. I'm just trying to find the right spot for showing it to you because I know where it is in the text, but I think I've already gone past it in what I was reading. Sorry, I'll be... Right, yes, I'll show that to you now. I'm just checking in case it was meant to come later on in the story. So here's, I'll give you the smaller version of it first so you can see it. It's quite an illustration. So the illustration is captioned, "The houses were made of great blocks of stone." So there they are. There's these houses up here. And there is the parade of the polar bear and the cats and the guy in the red cloak and a whole lot of other people along the way. But what I was going to do was actually make it so it's much bigger so you can see some of the detail of it. No! It sometimes flips them outside of the frame and I don't want it to do that. I've lost a picture that way. No, come back. I've lost a picture that. Come back. That way once. I don't know where it got to that time. And I wasn't able to bring it back. So I had to find it again in the book. So this is some of the buildings. So quite elaborate, quite large, quite solid. And here they are down the bottom here with the... That's Richard with his arm over the shoulder of the Mouldiwarp, who is now the size of a polar bear. There's Richard. There's the polar bear. This is the man in the red cape. Here's one of the cats. I'm not quite sure where the other cat is. The other cat should be there somewhere. But obviously these cats seem to be under his control. And these people are not used to that. And they're puzzled by it. And so therefore it has given him this opportunity to be a person of influence because of what he understands about the way the people in this place think. So that's why I didn't want to lose that opportunity to share the picture with you. Anyway, right. Yeah, I can substitute with my cat, yes. Except I'm not this magical being that can make things do what I want. Cats are not really like that. Anyone who's got a cat knows that. Anyway, but he's wonderful, and at some stage I will actually get him, and not today, unfortunately, but some other time when he's handy nearby, I will pick him up and show him to you. He's enormous and very fluffy, and sometimes that's why I have an itchy nose, because he has normal fur, but he also has this underlayer of very, very fine, very soft fur. And it's so fine that sometimes you'll get a piece on you and it will be tickling you, but you can't see it or feel it to remove it. And so that's why sometimes you'll see me rubbing my nose or the side of my face, because there's a little bit of fur, a little bit of fluff, and I can't find it to stop it tickling. Anyway, we'll carry on with reading the story. So they had come up to where this throne was, and sitting on either side of the chap who's obviously the king, with shining collars of jewels around their necks, were Father and Uncle Jim. "Not a word," said Cousin Dick, just in time to restrain the voices of the children, who were cats, because they're meant to be only making cat noises, remember. Their actions he could not restrain. Everyone in that hall saw two white cats spring forward and rub themselves against the legs of the man who sat up in the right-hand chair. Compelled to silence as they were by the danger of their position, Edred and Elfrida rubbed their white cat bodies against their father's legs in a rapture which I cannot describe, and purred enthusiastically. It was a wonderful relief to be able to purr, since they must not speak. Just remember, they've been without their father for several years now. They have really missed him. The king, he who sat on the high seat, stood up, looking down on them with wise, kind eyes, and spoke, seeming to ask a question. Quite as wonderfully as any trained bear, and far more gracefully, the white Mouldiwarp danced before the king of that mysterious hidden kingdom. Then Dick whistled, and Edred and Elfrida withdrew themselves from their passionate caresses of the only part of their father that they could get at, his legs, and stood upon their white hind cat feet. "The minuet," said Edred in a rapid whisper. Dick whistled a tune that they had never heard, but the tune was right, and now was seen the spectacle of two white cats slowly and solemnly going through the figures of that complicated dance to the music of Dick's clear whistling, turning, bowing, pacing with all the graces that Aunt Edith had taught them when they were Edred and Elfrida, and not white cats. Who knew that being able to dance, doing dance lessons, was going to be useful like this? When the last bow and curtsy ended the dance, the king himself shouted some word that they were sure meant well done. All the people shouted the same word, and only Father and Uncle Jim shouted, "Bravo!" Then the king questioned Dick. No answer. He laid his finger on his lips. Then the king spoke to Father, and he in turn tried questions in English and French, and then in other languages. And still Dick kept on laying his finger on his lips. And the white bear shook its head quite sadly, and the white cats purred aloud with their eyes on their father. Richard stooped. "When your father goes out, follow him," he whispered. And so when the king rose from his throne and went out, and everyone else did the same, the white cats, deserting Dick, followed close on their father's footsteps. When the king saw this, he spoke to the men about him, who were leading Richard in another direction, and presently the cats and the bear, that was the Mouldiwarp, and Richard found themselves alone with Uncle Jim and the father of Elfrida on a beautiful terrace shaded by trees and set all along its edge with wonderful trailing flowers of red and white and purple that grew out of vases of solid silver. And now, there being none of the brown people near, the people of this area, Richard looked full in the eyes of the father of Edred and Elfrida and said in a very low voice. So obviously he was saying that he couldn't speak to the king. The whole time, every time the king spoke or the others spoke, he was telling them that he couldn't speak because that would shortcut the amount of time that they would have to spend discussing things and answering the king's question and being put under pressure by the king. So Richard now said in a very low voice, "I am English. I've come to rescue you." "You're a bold boy," said Edred and Elfrida's father, "but rescue is impossible." "Hi, Aunt. Great to see you. Happy New Week to everybody. Yes, indeed." "You're a bold boy," said Edred and Elfrida's father, "but rescue is impossible." "There's not much time," said Richard again. "They've only let us come here just to see if you know us. I expect they're listening. You are Lord Arden now. The old lord is dead. I can get you out if you do exactly as I say." "It's worth trying," said Uncle Jim. "It's worth trying anyhow, whatever it is. Are you free to go where you like?" "Yes," said Lord Arden. Not Edred, but Edred's father, for Edred was now no longer Lord Arden. "You see, there's no way out but the one, and that's guarded by 100 men with poisoned arrows." This is what Lord Arden's saying. "Which is why they're stuck here, which is why the world thinks they're dead." "There is another way," said Richard, "the way we came. The white bear can carry you, one at a time." "Shall we risk it?" said Lord Arden, a little doubtfully. "Rather," said Uncle Jim. "Think of Edith and the kids." "That's what I am thinking of," said Lord Arden. "While we're alive, there's a chance. If we try this and fail, they'll kill us." "You won't fail," said Richard. "I'll help you to get home, but I would like to know how you got into this fix. It's only curiosity, but I wish you'd tell me. Perhaps I shan't see you again after today." "We stumbled on the entrance, the only entrance to the Golden Plain," said Lord Arden, "prospecting for gold among these mountains. They have kept us prisoners ever since because they are determined not to let the world know of the existence of the plain. There are always rumours of it, but so far no civilized people have found it. Every king, when he comes to the throne, takes an oath that he will die sooner than allow the plain to be infected by the wicked cruelties of modern civilization." Reasonable, I think. "I think so too," said Dick. I'm not quite sure why he said that, but obviously the same agreement. Wakanda, yeah, probably. I think it's that same sort of concept. That sort of idea behind a story has actually been culturally around for a very long time. This is an older civilization than that of the Incas, said Lord Arden, and it is the most beautiful life I have ever dreamed of. If they had trusted me, I would never have betrayed them. If I escape, I never will betray them. Thank you, Go. That's cool. Um, I never will betray them. If I let in our horrible system of trusts and syndicates and commercialism and crime on this golden life, I should know myself to be as great a criminal as though I had thrown a little child to wild beasts. The white cats noticed with wonder and respect that their father addressed Richard exactly as though he had been a grown up. That's odd. Yeah, I'm just going to give you guys. I am actually just going to interrupt the read because we're going to get to the end of the story. We're about halfway through, not quite, but just over halfway through. I've just given you a shout out for Goriki. Goriki is another reader in the Codex readers group. So Codex is that logo I've got over there that I'm pointing at, which is below the puzzle. And if you're on YouTube, you can't see that. But if you go over to my Twitch channel by following the links on, on YouTube, you will actually find out about it. So if you want to actually find out more about Codex, there are two ways. One is join Codex's Discord and get to know the different readers directly through the Discord server. There's a reading club, there's a movie club, there's people there who are obviously not part of, thank you, Go Ricky, obviously not actually readers in Codex, but they are people who love public domain books. They love hearing people reading books and that sort of thing. It's, you don't have to be a member of Codex, a reading member of Codex to actually join in. It's great. Great way to get to know some other people in different parts of the world. The other way to get to know the Codex readers is in the links below on my About page. There is a section there titled Codex, and there is a link to every one of the Codex readers on Twitch. And if you follow those links to each of them, you will, and then follow them themselves on their Twitch pages. Twitch will notify you when they're live, when they're reading or playing games, because a lot of the others play games as well. They don't just read. And you can get to know them by listening to them, by interacting with them in their chats and things like this. There's a lot of different things that the various Codex readers do, not just reading. There are one or two who only read and chat or only read. I only read children's books at this stage. I don't know how long that goes on. It depends on how many more children's books I find that are public domain. If they are going into public domain faster than I'm reading, then we won't run out, will we? But other readers read books that are children's books, but they also read books that are not specifically written for children, but they are all public domain books, or they are books that they have been given express permission to read. And I can't emphasize that enough. We don't think it's right to steal somebody else's livelihood. And if you are reading a book that has been published and the author is still alive and you are effectively broadcasting that book, that author is not getting anything from that. And you can say, well, they're getting publicity, but unless the author or the publisher has agreed that your publicity is suitable payment, it doesn't really count. I mean, you go to the supermarket and you get your groceries, you can't pay for your groceries with publicity. Not normally. So we can't expect authors to do that either. If we want them to keep creating, we need to find ways to support them. So that, for me personally, that is why I do not read these days. I do not read books that are not public domain or express permission books, just because I think everyone deserves to be paid fairly. So there you go. That's Codex. And it would be great if you do go and follow all these other Codex readers, interact with them when they're streaming, all that sort of stuff. There was something else I was going to tell you about that, and I can't remember what it was. Oh no. Yeah, I'll probably figure that one out a bit later on when it's a little bit too late, but we'll just see how we go. We'll just see how we go. I'm just trying to find a link because I think I might be going to need the link a little bit later on. Otherwise, Gariki can send it to me in the background. Okay, no, it's all right. I found it. Cool. Right. So we'll carry on with reading. We've got 14 or 15 pages till the end of the story. I'm hoping that we're going to get a really happy resolution, and maybe they actually get the chance to restore the cottages of the workers on the estate, all that sort of stuff. That would be really, really cool. And hi, iBlue, that's good to see you here too. Great to see you here. You guys will please say hello to each other, get to know each other in my chat. Don't wait for me to tell everybody what to do. There you go. That's the way. Yeah, join in, do the puzzle, all that sort of thing. And listen. Listening's good. Right, carrying on. So the cats are actually noticing, the cats, that's Edred and Elfrida, they have noticed with wonder and respect that their father is talking to Richard, who they think of as their cousin, exactly as if he was a grown up. Why might that be? We managed to send one line to a newspaper to say that we were taken by bandits, Lord Arden went on. It was all that they would allow us to do, but I accept that we have not been free. We have had everything: food, clothes, kindness, justice, affection. We must escape if we can because of my sister and the children, but it is like going out of Eden into the black country. That's so, said Uncle Jim, going from where they are, this wonderful place, out into somewhere that is hard to live and hard work. So that's what the reference is. That's so, said Uncle Jim. And if we are not to see you again, Lord Arden went on, tell me why you have come, at great risk it must be, to help us. I owe a debt, said Richard in a low voice, to all who bear the name of Arden. His voice sank so low that the two cats could only hear the words, head of the house. And now, Richard went on, you see that black chink over there? He pointed to the crevice in the cliff. Be there, both of you, at moonrise, and you shall get away safely to Arden Castle. You must come with us, of course, said Lord Arden. I might be of service to you. We have quite a respectable little fortune in a bank at Lima, not in our own names, but we can get it out if we can get us out. You've brought us luck, I'm certain of it. Won't you go with us and share it? I can't, said Richard. I must go back to my own time, my own place, I mean. Now I'll go. Come on, cats. The cats looked imploringly at their father, but they went and stood by Richard. Suppose we may go, he asked. Everyone is perfectly free here, said Lord Arden. The only thing you may not do is to leave the Golden Plain. It is very strange. There are hardly any laws. We are all free to do as we like, and no one seems to like to do anything that hurts anyone else. Only if anyone is caught trying to get into the other world, or to let the outer world in, he is killed without pain, and not as vengeance, but as necessity. The white cats looked at each other rather ruefully. This was not at all the way in which they remembered their daddies talking to them, because he talked to them as children, not as adults. But, said Lord Arden, for the children and my sister we must risk it. I trust you completely, and we will be at the crevice when the moon rises. So Richard and the three white animals went out down steps cut in the solid rock, and the townspeople crowded round them with fruits and maize cakes for Richard, and milk and golden platters for the cats. And later Richard made signs of being sleepy, and they let him go away among the fields, followed by the three white creatures, and at the appointed hour they all met under the vast cliff that was the natural wall and the guardian of the Golden Plain. And the Mouldiwarp carried Uncle Jim up to the top and then came back for Lord Arden and Richard. But before there was time to do more, a shout went up and 1,000 torches sprang to life in the city they had left, and they knew that their flight had been discovered. There's no time, the white bear Mouldiwarp, to the utter astonishment of Lord Arden, opened its long mouth and spoke. because Lord Arden didn't know that this was the white Mouldiwarp and that it's magical. He just thought it was a tamed animal. And the white cats also opened their mouths and cried, "Oh, Daddy, how awful! What shall we do?" "Hold your silly tongues," said the Mouldiwarp crossly. "You was told not to go gossiping. Here, scratch away out with them white paws of yours." It set the example, scratching at the enormous cliff with those strong, blunt, curved front feet of it. Because it's a mole, they dig. And the cats scratched too with their white padded gloves that had tiger claws to them, and the rock yielded. There was a white crack, wider and wider, and the swaying, swirling torches came nearer and nearer across the plain. "In with you," cried the Mouldiwarp. "In with you." "Jim," said Lord Arden. "I'll not go without Jim." "He's halfway there already," said the Mouldiwarp, pushing Lord Arden with its great white shoulder. "Come, I say, come." It pushed them all into the crack of the rock, and the cliff closed firm and close, fast behind them. An unanswerable no set up in the face of the pursuers. Remember, the Mouldiwarp has the power over white things, and the cliff is white chalk. "This way out," said the Mouldiwarp, pointing its dusty claw to where ahead light showed. "Why," said Edred, "it's the smuggler's cave. And there's the clock." Next moment, there it wasn't, for Richard had leapt on it, and he and it had vanished together, the Mouldiwarp clinging to the hour hand at the last moment. Is Jim an uncle? I think he's a family friend that's referred to as an uncle. I don't recall. He was mentioned very early on in the story when we discovered that the children's father was, when we as listeners found out that the father was missing. But I don't know that he's a relative uncle or if he's an honorary uncle. Sorry, I get distracted easily if you're new here. I have ADHD and I can be reading a sentence aloud to you, have my eyes on the word in the sentence, and still lose whereabouts on the page I am. No, it is not dyslexia. It's actually just my brain jumps sideways sometimes. It likes all the information, but it doesn't like to keep its place on the page. Anyway, so the Mouldiwarp was clinging to the hour hand at the last moment, so disappearing in time. The white cats which Edred and Elfrida drew back from the whirl, Edred and Elfrida, drew back from the whirl of the hands that was the first step towards vanishment of the clock. They saw their father and Uncle Jim go up the steps that led to the rude wooden door whose key was like a church key, the door that led to the opening among the firs that they had never been able to find again. Because it was from a different time period, remember? When the vanishing of the clock allowed them to follow, and they regained the sunny outer air where the skylarks were singing as usual, they were just in time to see two figures going towards the castle and very near it. They turned to look at each other. "Why," said Edred, "you're not a cat any more." "No more are you, if it comes to that," said Elfrida. "Oh, Edred, they're going in at the big gate. Do you think it's really real, or have we just dreamed it this time?" It was much more dreamish than any of the other time travelling they'd done. "I feel," said Edred, sitting down abruptly, "as if I'd been a cat all my life and been swung around by my tail every day of my life. I think I'll sit here till I'm quite sure of whether I'm a white cat or Edred Arden." "I know which I am," said Elfrida, but she, too, was not sorry to sit down. "That's easy. You aren't either of them," said Edred. Because she's not Edred Arden. That's what the reference is, either of them, a white cat or Edred Arden, because she's Elfrida. When half an hour later they slowly went down to the castle, still doubtful whether anything magic had ever really happened, or whether all the magic things that had seemed to happen had really been only a sort of double or twin dream, they were met at the door by Aunt Edith, pale as the pearl and ivory of the white clock, and with eyes that shone like the dewdrops on the wild flowers that Elfrida had given to the Queen. Oh, kiddies, she cried. Oh, dear, darling kiddies. And she went down on her knees so that should be nearer their own height and could embrace them on more equal terms. Something lovely's happened, she said. Something so beautiful you won't be able to believe it. They kissed her heartily, partly out of affection and partly to conceal their want of surprise. The fact that they aren't as surprised as they ought to be. Oh dear. Right. Getting there, getting there. What's going to happen? Darlings, it's the loveliest thing that could possibly happen. What do you think? Daddy's come home, said Elfrida, feeling dreadfully deceitful. Yes, said Aunt Edith. How clever of you, my pet. And Uncle Jim. They've been kept prisoners in South America, and an English boy with a performing bear helped them to escape. No mention of cats. The children felt hurt. And they had the most dreadful time, months and months and months, coming across the interior, no water and Indians and all sorts of adventures. Sorry, oh, itchy nose, and I need to drink something. Yes, I really do need to set up a hydrate command. Hi, Squibble, great to have you here, and Squibbles, chat friends, great to have you here. Everyone else who's already here in my chat. So, I'm just going to see if I can release your comment there. I can't remember how I'm meant to be able to do that. I'm sorry. There's meant to be a way that I can put your comment, allow your comment in. So kia ora, Scribble with the Scribble Squad. Yeah, Scribble Squad. Sorry. The reason why that's been banned is probably just because the my chat auto thingy doesn't allow a whole bunch of no, I can't even format that properly, so I'm not going to do that. Doesn't allow more than a certain number of emotes in a comment. Sorry about that. But we'll get there. I will get that sorted one day as to how I can release a message so that it still goes through properly. So that was why I read it out instead. So I've just given those of you who are already here, I think I did. Yes, I did. I gave a shout out for Squibble. Squibble's an artist. She does book illustration and other artworks, all sorts of wonderful stuff. So do check out her channel at some stage. Open it in the background in your browser if you need to do it that way. I don't know how you do it, whatever device you're on, but give her a follow as well. So she does some wonderful artwork, and she's often on at a time of day where before I actually normally do my reading streams. I often catch her when she's actually doing her artwork earlier in the day, and it's a good way to just have some stuff going on in the background and look at this beautiful work that she's doing. Fine paintbrushes often is at the stage where I see it, where she's doing the centers on flowers in a field or something like that. The last one I remember watching was where she was doing illustrations for The Wizard of Oz, I think it was, where they were going down the road. It was two hillsides and a road between it, and there were some poppies and other flowers and stuff on the hillside. So yeah, gorgeous, worth having a look at. And she has the cutest emotes that she's created herself. They're really gorgeous. Anyway, so we're nearly at the end of this book and nearly at the end of this chapter, and I'm hoping that there are a couple of little points that we are going to have resolved for us, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure if they will or not. I really want them to, but you know how stories sometimes are. So we'll just see how it goes. Ooh, where did that go? Something just disappeared. Oh, there it is. Sorry, one of my windows on my computer just disappeared, and I was just wondering where it had got to. So here we go. We'll carry on with reading. Right. So that's right. We've got Aunt Edith Edith? Yes, Aunt Edith is telling them what's been happening to Father and Uncle Jim as they were getting what had happened to them, why they were gone, why everybody thought they were dead, and how they've come back and how they're safe. And some of this, I think, are stories that the guys have made up to cover their time away because they're not allowed to tell anyone about the existence of the Golden Plain. Right, so they had the most dreadful time, months and months and months, coming across the interior of South America. No water, Indians and all sorts of adventures, and Daddy had fever and would insist that the bear was the Mouldiwarp, our crest, you know. Come to life and talking just like you or me. No wonder she thinks he had a fever if he's been telling her that. And that there were white cats that had your voices and called him Daddy, but he's all right now, only very weak. That's why I'm telling you all this. You must be very quiet and gentle. Oh, my dears, it's too good to be true, too good to be true. Isn't that wonderful that he's back? Now, was it the father of Edred and Elfrida who had brain fever and fancied things, or did they, blameless of fever and not too guilty of brains, imagine it all? Uncle Jim can tell you exactly how it all happened. There is no magic in his story. Father, I mean Lord Arden, does not talk of what he dreamed when he had brain fever, and Edred and Elfrida do not talk of what happened when they hadn't had brain fever. At least they do, but only to me. This is the author. It's all very wonderful and mysterious, as all life is apt to be if you go a little below the crust and are not content just to read newspapers and go by the tube railway and buy your clothes ready-made and think nothing can be true unless it is uninteresting. There's our author's little comment about overlooking the intriguing things in life and living just on the surface. And there's a gap in the story there. Like if I was reading a book to my children when they were little, I would say pause. It's where you have the text of the story comes and then you have a ... section or a text ornament, and then you have another section starts. It's kind of like a shift of time or a shift of scene, but not enough to be a whole other chapter. I found the most wonderful photographs of pictures of Arden Castle, said Aunt Edith later on. We can restore the castle perfectly from them. I do wish I knew where the original pictures were. Do you remember these pictures and what the children had thought about when they were thinking about hiding them where they did? I'm afraid we can't restore the castle, said Lord Arden, laughing. Our little fortune's enough to keep us going quite comfortably, but it won't rebuild Norman masonry. I do wish we could have found the buried treasure, said Edred. We've got treasure enough, said Aunt Edith, looking at Uncle Jim. I think Uncle Jim's a friend of the family and she's rather fond of him. As for what Elfrida thinks, well, I wish you could have seen her face when she went into the parlour that evening after Aunt Edith had knelt down to meet them on equal terms and tell them of the treasure of love and joy that had come home to Arden. There was Lord Arden, looking exactly like the Lord Arden she had known in the gunpowder plot days. Also exactly like the Daddy she had known all her life, sitting at ease in the big chair just underneath the secret panel behind which Sir Edward Talbot had hidden when he was pretending to be the Chevalier St. George. His dear face was just the same, and the smile on it was her own smile, the merry, tender, twinkling smile that was for her and for no one else in the world. It was just a moment that she stood at the door, but it was one of these moments that are as short as a watch tick and as long as a year. She stood there and asked herself, have I dreamed it all? Isn't there really any Mouldiwarp or any treasure? And then a great wave of love and longing caught at her, and she knew that, Mouldiwarp or no Mouldiwarp, the treasure was hers, and in one flash She was across the room and in her father's arms, sobbing and laughing and saying again and again, "Oh, my daddy, oh, my daddy, my daddy." The end. So I think, what do you think? I think that quite possibly the children did actually, at some stage in their future, work towards, or with their father's help, work towards looking after the cottages of the old workers' cottages that were part of their estate, just so that the people who lived there would actually have somewhere nice and safe and healthy to live in, rather than having the rain coming in through the roof and the rats in the ceiling and all that sort of stuff. Yes, you did make it just in time for the end, and I'm so sorry you missed the earlier stages of it, Squibble, but that's okay. If you really want to hear it, you can go and have a listen to the video after I've finished. So what I'm thinking we will go and do after this one, because nobody has made any suggestions over in the Discord server or in chat. Yes, it is a good story. I really enjoyed this one. There is a sequel to it, and it's called Harding's Luck. And I don't think it's a direct sequel. I think it's one of those, it's connected but not directly in line with the story type of sequels. A Canadian book would be cool. Yes, a Canadian book would be cool. We have had a Canadian book before. We had Emily of New Moon by L.M. Montgomery. Did you hear that one at all? Were you here at that stage, Q, when I was reading that? That one, if you ever want to hear it, it's available on YouTube, Emily of New Moon. It's one of the in New Zealand, it's a lesser known L.M. Montgomery story. I know in Canada, it's one that's more well known. And there are 2 other books in that particular series, which I'm not reading here because they're actually Emily when she's in her late teens and early 20s, which is beyond the scope of what I generally read, because I'm trying to read books that are for children and early teens, just so they can retain a little bit of that sense of wonder in childhood sort of thing. But yeah, it's Emily's. It was great. It was. I loved the Emily book far more than the Anne books when I was growing up. And so it was lovely to be able to read that. I have thought about reading, I'll show you. I have a picture here. I have thought about reading this one. There you go. What do you reckon? Could we read this next? How are you with the idea of having the story of Dr. Dolittle with the push me, pull you, and Gub Gub, is it Gub Gub or Jub Jub? Gub Gub the pig and the Dab Dab the duck, or I can't remember the names of them. It's been so long, and no, I haven't seen the movies. So I'm thinking we could go with those ones. Polynesia was was that the bird? Polynesia? Even though it's also a region, a world region. It's way so far back in my memory. So this one is the first book in the series. There are a whole lot of other books that were written, but because it's North American, oh yay! It actually worked. The puzzle worked all the way. You guys completed it. Treasure Island. There you go. And it's basically a painting of a ship and a wharf and palm trees and ropes and anchors and all that sort of stuff. Wonderful. I won't start you another one just because I'm just about to sign off, and I have a link that I need to get you guys so we can go and raid someone. What do you reckon? Should we give it a try? See if I can figure out how to raid someone? That would be good, wouldn't it? I just need to find the link that I had for that before, which I went and lost. I think I went too far. There it is. Right, it's nothing that's wildly exciting, but it's lovely, this one. So what do you reckon? You happy to go with me for the we'll do a raid to another channel. I should just check to see that they're actually online at the moment, shouldn't I? Because that's what you're meant to do before you suddenly go and tell everybody we're going to raid someone and then you don't. Oh yes, it's online at the moment. Where we're going to go, if you stay with me when we do it, is to a site called Hoot House live stream. So it's a live stream for a place that has several different cameras up for an owl family or an owl box, and they are wild owls. They are not pet owls. It's in North America. It's family friendly, which is why I'm happy to use it as a place that we can go to from here. Owls, yes, owls. I'm just trying to find the right button on my control thingy here to do what I need to do next, which is, hang on. Oh, I don't have that one available. I thought I did. And then we can set it up to go over to there. I thought I had my, not that one, not that one, that one, add. Sorry, I'm just trying to get it sorted so I can do the right thing to... There it is there, that one there. So if you guys are all happy to, we shall go across to Hoot House, to their live stream. And it's one of those ones you just have it on the side and occasionally you'll see something fly past. You'll also see, at the moment there are no chicks in the box, but sometimes they do have chicks in the box. I think it depends on the season, but here we go. We'll see how it works. And if you don't want to, you can possibly stay on my channel and it will host them over here. I'm not sure. I've never done this before. Anyway, great to have you here. Lovely to have you part of it all. Look forward to seeing you next time with The Story of Dr. Dolittle, this book here by Hugh Lofting. And in the meantime, enjoy the owls and happy reading. Bye. See how we go. And it's going in a few seconds. Take care for you guys too, and do get well. I hope you're feeling a lot better than you were before. Great to have you. Bye.